So, where's my camera? Hello. I am today building a bunch of things. It is more exploratory. The last few things I've had a pretty clear goal in mind. Today, some of these things I'm unsure of. Oh, my Sublime is really having trouble over here. No, Sublime, okay. I don't know why it does that. We're going to try doing things. Some of the things will work well, some of them won't. Most important thing is stream art, which isn't really a thing that you build in core, except for it makes sense for what I'm doing. My stream's all core, and I need some art specifically to me. The official core stream has a bunch of art assets made by real artists that I can use when I'm streaming on their channel, but this is my channel. It's not official. I should be making my own things, and I can use screenshots, so I'm going to try to build things that look okay. And you'll see what happens when an engineer builds art. It looks better than the things you saw last time, and much worse than art. So, let us see. First thing I'm going to do, I think, let's make it an empty project. Stream art. I'm probably gonna go back and forth a little bit today. The first thing I want to do is get a picture for my Twitch stream. I could just get a picture of my face. Maybe that's what I should do. Just take the same picture I used for, where did that picture go? Discord, maybe? Yeah, I could use my Discord picture. Maybe that's the way to go. It kind of looks like me. It's for my wedding. Or I could make something and take a picture of my avatar, for example. I'm basically always going to play the same avatar in this game because, well, that's probably not true. I'll probably mix it up in the future when I'm bored, but I like purple. Amazingly, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I generally, as an adult, I kind of like purple a lot. I feel strongly about it. I think it looks really good. And then I felt like that's kind of a child thing to do, and I just kind of, whatever, I'll keep it to myself and not tell people about it. And then I worked at Manticore, and there are 2 coworkers who like colors much more than I do, and then I don't feel weird about it at all anymore. So, I could just take a picture of this character. And the raptor? Not a horse. We got amount of time. Let's do that. Player settings, mount time. Oh, one more thing I'm going to try to do today, and probably fail, is that I talk too fast. I would like to talk slower. I think that for the sake of clarity, for these being useful for new users, that sort of thing, that I should generally just slow down, talk through what I'm doing carefully. I watched my own stream a little bit to compare mic quality and was shocked that it was hard to follow myself. And that doesn't, bode well for other new users trying to watch my stream. I don't like the horse. Hello? Oh man, an orange. The lighting's all wrong. Probably don't have any lights in my maps. I basically never have lights in my maps. I should have more lights in my maps. Let us, I don't even know what kind of lights we have. There's an area light. Ooh. There is, I believe these are all going to be smart objects. These are sounds, these are UI textures, these are more sounds, that's an icon. Point light. Skylight, which we already have one of, and it might be one of the types you can't have more than one of. Let's see. Okay, no, you can have more than one of those. It would complain to me that immediately if that was bad. I think sunlight is one I can't have 2 of. We'll see that one in a minute. Skylight adjustment volume, interesting. We'll take a look at that. There's a spotlight. Here's some actual primitives. There's a sunlight. Yep, that complained immediately. Can't have 2 of those. And some materials. Okay. So, this is go along with Zuri as he learns about lighting for a minute. So this looks like an area light. It starts with an area emitter and emits in a certain direction. So you could use this for, I don't know, like a fluorescent light or something, but also just, let me tell you a story. I got into mapping when I was a kid. Open this can of soda, sorry. Playing Half-Life era games, Half-Life 1 and Counter-Strike and those sorts of games. And back in those days, because of the technologies available at the time and just what they happen to use, you made your map in the editor, and the editor didn't have real looking lighting at all. You didn't get to see what it was going to look like. You just kind of had to guess. You put things in places, you put lights, but they didn't light in the editor at all. It would be very flat, and you got pretty good at guessing if you were a person new to this, professional map designer. And then you would compile your map, and it would do a bunch of pre-processing. It honestly took like 20 or 30 minutes with some maps. And one of the things it did was called Viz for visibility, or that's the wrong one. Rad for radiance for lights. Visibility was also a thing, but it doesn't have to do with lighting at all. It was the last step, and it would calculate all the lighting in the whole scene and bake it in. Just each thing was as glowy as it was based on the lights, and you couldn't have moving lights and that sort of thing. That was a later generation thing to add. And the best way to light things in that engine was there was literally a text document that went with the whole process that you just said, these textures have this brightness of light coming from them. So you go through the huge list of textures available, and back then there's materials without any other properties. It's just a grid of pixel. They don't have a normal map or any of that nonsense. And you'd find the name, and you type it in the text document, and you say, I want to have this RGB and brightness value, or maybe the probably wasn't an alpha, it's probably RGB and a brightness. And then you cook your map, and when you actually load it up in the game, then everything that was that texture was emitting light. And so you'd use it for things like a fluorescent light bulb texture. There was one texture that was like the whole panel of fluorescent lights. In this case, this is kind of what we have here. Only you can move it around, you can see how it looks. That's very convenient. You can have lights that would flicker and change at runtime and move around. That's great. Point light, I believe, just shoots light in every direction. Let's see. If I rotate it, it does nothing at all. Yep, this just shoots out light everywhere. That's useful. And a spotlight is a cone. I bet that if I asked our VFX guy what the differences between these are, he would tell me 100 different nuances and details and optimizations and all sorts of things that are more than just different shapes. However, what I want right now is a way to lighten my character so that I can take a screenshot. So I'm going to do this. Just have 3 different places in my map I can go with different lighting. I'll do the skylight adjustment volume. What does this do? I don't need advanced settings. This is, oh, I see. Because there's only one skylight, if you want different skylights in different places in your map, this thing will change it as you move around. You could probably do this with a script. This is helpful for people who don't want to do a script or want some things built in, makes it a little easier. You can change the intensity and the tint when you're in a certain place. I don't need that. There are some post-process effects that are everywhere in the world, change how something looks. Some of these are actually really amazing. Let me post-process. For example, ambient, is there AO? Maybe it's just AO. Really? It's actually called ambient occlusion now. You just drag this in your world, and it changes how everything looks. This is actually amazingly helpful. It's kind of subtle when all you have is the debug textures. In fact, it may do nothing at all. Oh, you can see it. Okay. Let me do that again. So if I go back and forth, you see how the edge looks a little better with the thing in the map. You got a kind of a darkening, and it looks more rounded. If I put real materials and things and had stuff around my map, it would be very obvious how much better this makes things look, which is kind of magic. Anyway, right now, I go stand in my light, turn around. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty bad. Yep, too bright. Let's back a little bit. I'll try the lights in a minute. I think the lights being from above is going to look funny. Alright, now I want something cool behind me, and this sure isn't it, so we're going to get community content in a second. I need to change the movement settings. That is way too much. Let me... which one do I want? Face movement. Okay, I believe this is what we used to call loose controls. Yes, I can run towards the camera. That kind of works. I wanted to be able to back up. want to be able to do this and then have my hit W to strafe away from me. I don't know if I can actually do that. It doesn't matter. I'm here. Okay, this is actually worse, but that light isn't very helpful. This was the cone light, but I think it's still facing down. Yeah, this looks like I'm trying to spook some kids and I've got a flashlight over my head or something. Alright, so this one is what we need. We need some cool things behind it. We'll get rid of these guys. Maybe we shouldn't just steal other people's things and put it on my Twitch. Maybe I should. I mean, this sharing is a part of this, isn't stealing, but maybe I should make something myself, or just have some cool terrain. Or maybe just an amalgamation of things. A single roll of toilet paper. What modern art? Or some primitives. What is the filter for primitive? Static mesh. And some terrain, perhaps? It's a very different stream so far, but we will be scripting before you know it, don't worry. See, the reason I want to do this one first is that I want the picture on my Twitch page, and then I want to link my Twitch in Discord. But when I linked my Twitch in Discord last time, it showed the default Twitch icon huge in Discord, and I was like, that's not what I'm trying to do here. It's kind of embarrassing. All right, so Box Arena, Rocky Hills. So these are kind of, you want an impressive background like a mountain. You don't want some hills just in the foreground. You can kind of do that by just rotating the entire terrain. But I think we can get something better. Box Arena. Rocky Mountains, Rocky Meadows, Desert Dunes, Rocks, Desert Monuments. What is this? That's really cool. Sweet. Let's get rid of our default floor. We don't need that anymore. We're going to have to move a couple things up here. Basically everything else in our game. The spawn point and the area light we need to move up. Let's move it forward too. And then I had this on stream a little while ago, and then I learned about it when talking to... So I want to have this in the background. So I'm going to take this guy... Oh, panic. I had found that when I took the cube here, so I know where the light is, so it'll be lit up. I took the sky stuff and moved up and down, and the level changed drastically. Let me show you. I'll put that down underground and hit play. Galaxy is near limit. Wow, okay. And this looks alright. And then I drag this up above the ground. And hit play. Maybe this one doesn't have it. Maybe it was a different sky. It looked very bright, much brighter, and it turned out that one of these things is actually doing a pre-compute, like doing a single render and using that as the light map, like a cube map, and that's intentional. So you actually do want the thing above the ground, or else you get like the darkened underground experience. I was surprised, but yeah, it works. All right, so let's put, first of all, this is desert something, so we need a material. Terrain, desert, bam. Yeah, this looks way, way better. All right, and if I hit play, go stand in front of this light. We don't even need the light anymore with the desert. Looks pretty cool. I can walk towards the camera, that makes sense. Okay, that's why I wanted this. I'm going to take the camera and make the distance adjustable. Make the minimum 0. So I can zoom all the way in. Let's get that. Oh, well, let's kill the offset too. So now I'm dead center. You usually don't want this for any game where you're shooting, because your crosshair's right on your own head and it's hard to see what you're shooting at. But for any game where shooting is not a main component of it, the offset is just there for no reason. I realize I can't see chat. No one's chatting. Okay. Too bright. Maybe I want the light up. Yeah, I want the light higher, I think. It's more subtle. All right, we can update this later, but I just want something that looked a little more, you know, reasonable than a blue box texture. Although maybe a blue boxy texture represents my stream very well. That being said, if you look at something an artist makes, it still doesn't look anything like this. You can tell that I'm not an artist. All right, so we're going to print screen here. We're going to load up the old P-brush and do some cropping. Something like that, maybe. You might tell me to use the snip tool, and I would love to, but this is Windows 7. It's an older computer. Don't ask too much. I like it. All right, so now I've got a thing that looks like me. That's what I'm going for here. Give me a minute to update my thing, and we'll have to figure out how to do that. Nope, that's here. Add profile picture. Cannot exceed 10 megabytes. Okay, well, let us save this. Press over here. Oh, that actually worked. You can't see my secret files. I don't have secret files. And that being said, I'm still not going to risk accidentally showing off something that I, my name or something. No one knows my name. It's not in the stream or anything. My tax information, my dental records. Twitch. Excuse me. Perfect. It has a little thing where it tells me how to crop. And I probably can't show you without dragging a whole browser over there, but it, yeah. That looks really good. Turned into a circle. All right, now my Twitch has a picture of me. Great. Well, enough of that. We'll come back to this map in a minute. We'll leave it there so we can do something with it for the other art. Basically, the art I'm looking for, just for a heads up, this shouldn't take too much time, at least not now, I can include it later, is the cover screen when I start or end a stream, or if I'm experiencing technical difficulties, I can have a full page screen that has something core themed, shows my character doing something cool or something. And then if you look underneath the stream, there are those little things that show that have text and say about core, about me. Those should have a cool looking, style or something like that, which I can probably make in core fairly easily. All right, so up next, advertising on Discord. Let's see if this actually finds the right picture. Oh, I gotta update the link again. Did this last time too. It doesn't know a hyperlink unless you type the whole thing out. Boop. Hey, got the right picture. Sweet. Okay. Up next, components. Let's look at that Sublime text document. All right, so ziplines question mark I had left here. A couple streams ago, I made some ziplines, and they had some problems. They're definitely, I'm going to load them up and try to make them a little better. I think I left them with one or two things to do. When I make components, so if I load up, let me find my zipline level. If you go into core content and you go down here and it says game components, I have made a lot of these. Me and one other guy are responsible for every single one of these. And when I make these, I follow a very strict pattern. They're very consistent. That's very important to me. They all have, let me take one that I made, ability display. So if you go in here and look at the scripts, they've got a big copy at the top. They've got comments. They're very organized. They have comments for every single function. I tried to make it so a new person can go in here and have some idea what to do. And if you are a new to medium user, intermediate user, and you want to work with one of these, and it almost does what you want. You have a game, a very simple example, or a maybe common example. You have a game where you want to have shields or a mana bar, and you pick the health bar and you're like, okay, here's a health bar, but I need mana bar instead. That's another resource. It works a little differently, but how do I do that? You could look at this thing, and you might be able to figure out what to do to it. This one's very simple, right? Here's the line that sets the text. If if you are showing a number out of a maximum, and if you're showing just the number itself. And here is the line that sets the progress bar. You want to change that to mana instead, you put in your own things. Pretty straightforward. Hopefully a new user will be able to find that. This is missing a comment. Well, shame on me. I will make a note to fix that tomorrow. Health bar tick comment. Okay. So there's a certain quality threshold. I want my components, anything that is official in core, that comes here in the core content menu, it should work out of the box without problems. If a new user comes in here and drags into their scene and immediately they hit play and it gives them a script error or it doesn't do what they're expecting or something like that, that's really, really bad experience. So anything that's kind of janky or kind of works some of the time and you might have to fiddle with a little bit, or if you set it up the wrong way it doesn't work, that's not the quality bar. It doesn't go in there. The one kind of exception to this is that some of these will not work well in certain camera modes. Like if you take these weapons and then try to make a very strange camera mode, it may not work very well and you might have to fiddle with it. But for the most part, these just work. And you should be able to put a lot of them into a single game and it should still mostly work. There is a line, there's some point where you put too many things together and it's impossible to test every configuration. But we try to be pretty careful about having them interact in ways that only some of them interact with each other. Anyway, point I'm getting to here is that the zip lines do not hit that quality bar at all. As you will see, they feel very janky. And so that is the next tier down. I think it'd be useful. I think it's cool. I think people would want to play with this and do something, make a game out of it. But it is a pretty bad feeling. Sometimes in the wrong setup or whatever. For instance, if you take the zip line and put one end underground, and then you go stand next to it and hit F, it'll drop you through the ground and drop you off the bottom of the world. That's not good. I talked about it on the stream before. It was a problem that doesn't have any clean solution without a lot of work, and the actual solution really is just don't make your map that way. So I will make when I publish this, which I may already have done. I have not. When I publish it, I'll put some text in that says, here's how to use it. Be careful with it. If you do it the wrong way, it'll break. And now I'm remembering what actually broke with this and why we need to play with it. So, the point being that there's the line below that is published community content. I will share things in community content as they reach me. You look for me, you find the things I've made. And then this item, because that's in every search. These are generally things that I think will be useful for some people. They only work sometimes if you set it up correctly. If you click on this one, for example, it's got a big thing that says how to set it up. I wonder if I make this window taller, if that would be more readable. I should get that feedback. Down. All right. So it says, this thing, it gives you click to move, but it's kind of janky. You slide around. You have to have your player settings in the right way. And depending on the game you're doing, this might not do what you want at all. You don't animate. You slide. So if you run into things, it might act strangely if other players run into each other. It's kind of like, here's the way you can sort of do that. We'll enable you to make much better things in the future. I know some ideas about how to do that, but it's not there yet. Zipline, it's no different. But it's still useful for people, and I want to fiddle with it a little bit to get it to be a little bit better. And I remember now exactly what was wrong with it, and I will show you. So we're gonna put it in places where you can actually touch both ends. That needs to be a little bit lower. Okay. Where is my spawn point? Spawn point, come way over here. Alright, so I go up to this thing, I hit F, and I go flying a little bit and then stop. Something that I changed at the last moment made it not work. You're supposed to stick to this zip line and hang from it. So let's find the script. Let's expand this whole thing. Find client, zip line, server, 2 scripts, as often is true. All right. So the way this thing is set up is that it's almost entirely server controlled, which makes sense. The server has the authority to push the player around, teleport them, change their properties. The client can't do that. All the client does is say, hey, this player interacted. Please send along my view rotation. And the reason we do that, and not just do this on the server, uninteractive can be called on the server, it's automatically networked for you, is that we need to know which way the player's looking, because that's how you control which way you go on the zipline. I'm kind of modeling this off of the Apex universe Titanfall. You aim this way, you go this way, you aim this way, you go whichever way you're looking. And you have some magic propellant. If you look at Titanfall and Apex, you will see that they have little jet belt things. They have like jet engines on their butts. That is how they magically let you, explain away that you can go flying. For gameplay reasons, it is a lot of fun to be able to go both directions. Making anything that only goes down or is a lot worse. I considered also making this have like a curve shape and moving along it, which would make it look more natural. That's a lot more work and doesn't add a lot to the basic functionality and the fun of the game. So, we look back at our scripts. Client sends an event, server catches the event. Here it is. And what does it do? It calls a function called start zipline. If this is the right trigger, every time I use events for a script, you pass along some identifier so that when you have multiple of them in your game, they connect to the right one. You don't press F on one zipline and suddenly find yourself riding a different zipline. And then if you are not already ziplining, unfortunately there's a limitation here that I don't have a even passable solution, or passable is not the right word. I don't have a smooth-ish feeling hack available to me that I know of, which is that while you're riding the zipline, the use prompt is still there because you're still on the trigger. I was gonna say there is kind of a hack where you could put the one trigger at each end, and then when you're in the middle, you don't have an option. But you want to be able to grab it in the middle. If you're falling, you want to be able to catch it. If you want to turn around while you're riding it, you want to be able to turn around and press the button again or something. Although that doesn't currently work. You could, one of the, let's see, binding press. This is the space bar. I should make a comment about that. Space bar. If you jump, it actually does a manual jump for you. We played with this on stream before, and trying to get the jumps to actually work, it felt weird because I think it was more that the jumps were doing literally how jumps should work, but it didn't feel right with an angled zip line. It felt like because you were moving along and at an angle, it felt like you weren't jumping at all or not enough, and when you turned the other way, you were jumping way too high, so I did a little bit of custom stuff. We'll see how that feels in a minute. So I hooked it up to manually do that, but it also ends your ziplining. So you can jump and then you can immediately re-grab it turning the other way if you want to do that. And then, so the start zipline, end zipline, clearly do what they need. Zipline speed, we can put that as a field right in the root. I'll do that today. Let's actually add that to our list. Zipline, move speed to root. Okay. And then if you end overlap with it, you end ziplining. This is the problem I have here, or half the problem I have here, is how would you end overlap? Well, you would run off the end of it, or somehow get knocked off of it if something hit you or whatever. I guess this should be okay. We'll play with it a little bit. We might have to remove this. You should be able to stick with it. The problem is when the server controls the player's movement, you have a latency of network time. Admittedly, even in local preview, there's a little bit where the client is predicting its own movement and pretty far ahead, and then the server says, hey, no, wait, you're here now. And then it takes a little bit for that round trip to happen and correct itself. And it has a bunch of saved. It's a complex system. And it has to be that way. Every single modern game works this way. Every single multiplayer game. And otherwise it feels terrible. If you know someone who played Quake 1 when it was new, they can tell you how multiplayer felt. It was really bad because it didn't have this at all. When you press W on your keyboard, you didn't move until the message got to the server and back to you. So here we are. And if you leave, you're not ziplining anymore. That makes sense. When you press the button, and on tick, we do another check here, which is, are you grounded? Did you touch the ground? Okay, then you're stopping ziplining. Let me see if that was what I was just saying. I don't think so. If I jump, No. Okay. And if your velocity is less than a certain amount, if you have cut down your velocity to if you've lost 10% of your velocity, then we assume something happened. Something hit you. You ran into another player coming the other way. You ran into a wall, whatever. Whenever this happens, we say, okay, drop the zip line. The zip line isn't working right. The way the zip line works is instead of trying to set your position over and over again, it literally just removes all your controls and rockets you in a straight line and lets you just glide. That way it looks smooth for everyone. So we go up here. Here's what start zip line does. We figure out exactly what direction the player is facing from the values passed in. If you look at this, I didn't actually pass the entire rotation. I passed 2 components of it. That's because that's all we need to know which way you're facing, and it doesn't usually have the third component. Then we set your gravity to 0. So if you're not falling, that's the part that doesn't seem to be working at the moment. We wait a little bit to got that kick in. Make sure. My worry was basically, this is how I left it, and it clearly doesn't work. But it kind of works before that. I tried a few things, and then I left it broken. My worry was that you'd set the gravity, you set the position and movement, all this stuff, and then the player would fall a little bit before it got all the message. And then you'd be out of the range that you'd leave the zipline trigger, and then you would stop working. So we set movement control mode none. That means your buttons don't do anything. Set your animation stance. We played with a couple. Scorecard is your hands are both up in the air. It kind of looks like you're holding the zip line, but you're holding, your hands aren't in the right configuration. It's kind of close. So not a lot of options. You can't mount. You lose your mount. We use this table to keep track of the binding pressed event. So we only care about binding pressed event if you're ziplining. It's probably not a great name for the table. Whatever. And then we figure out which way you're going. So this is the forward where the player's looking. This is the forward vector of the trigger on the zipline itself. And if the dot product is positive, they're in one direction. If it's negative, it's the other direction. So we set your velocity to that direction, and we set your world rotation. This currently works only in a single player preview. It'll be fixed soon. And then, I guess it works somewhat in multiplayer. Other people can see you correctly. You just can't see yourself. And then we take your, let's see. Okay, I remember this logic. This is a good piece of math to know how to do if you ever want to be an engineer, because it is, I've been asked this in multiple interviews, and it's come up at least 4 times since I've worked at Manticore. This is finding the closest point on a line to a point, the simplified version, which is to say, I'm literally just finding the closest point on an infinite line, not a finite line. So basically, where am I closest to this zip line? But if I'm off the end, then don't even work, just go to the point that's off the end. So I take the player position and the trigger position. The trigger position is the middle of the trigger. V, trigger's pretty fat. Somewhere over here, right? Right there. I subtract those to get an offset, and then I find I do some vector math that goes over here a little bit. It's a dot product of the vector along the trigger and the player offset. That tells me how far along the offset I am. Multiply by that vector again and add to the position, and I get the nearest point. I subtract 150 up because that makes my hands look like they're grabbing the zip line. And then I should be going. So the question is, why do I still have gravity? I actually don't know the answer to this question. If I take away that weight, it works in single player. This is puzzling. Hit the end of it, and I'm off. Oh no! So this looks great. That's what we want. I can ride along. If I jump, you see I go flying up. I can F. I can jump and turn around. If I press F while I'm riding, nothing happens. That's another thing that should be improved in the future. Some control over that prompt. More than just being able to change the text, being able to say, run some logic, that sort of thing. You see my hands look like they're holding a scorecard. And I hit the ground, see them grounded, it works. You also get this offset here. This happens sometimes. What happened is I was touching the ground where I was too tall, right? I don't need to be down in the ground to touch it. And when it tries to set my position, the engine says, I'm partway into the ground, and doesn't like that. So it actually stacks me back up and tries to find the nearest good spot. So I'll go over here. Looks great. If I go all the way down here, I hand to the wrong position, and it doesn't fix itself. Because that would be... it would have to send more updates, and I'm trying to avoid that. This is kind of annoying. I think it's okay. I think the goal would be that you put these in places where you can't get into that position. If we did the more advanced nearest point intersection, where imagine you had one of these off the side of a building and you want to go over and hit F, if it was smart enough to find the nearest point over on the end, you know, somewhere inside the thing rather than out here, it would put your feet off the bottom of the thing. It'd be kind of good. I'm not going to put too much time into this. I think it's pretty fun already. I think what I want to fix is that it doesn't work in multiplayer without that weight. And with that weight, didn't even fix the problem. So if I go into multiplayer, so that didn't take me off the ground at all. If I jump, I just fall. Sometimes it works. I think it is a latency, and I bet if this was published, it'd be a lot worse, which is that I fall outside of the trigger before it fixes itself. Ooh, no. That is a subtle division here. This triangle here I can stand on, this triangle here I can't. Alright, so this works okay. But a game where things work some of the time is going to be real frustrating to play. Press that and you fall. I hit F, you saw it, it set my velocity, but then I didn't stay up there. So I can fiddle with the script a little bit and see if there's a way we can make this work. I'm surprised that setting gravity and weighting didn't do anything. Actually, I'm very surprised by that. The fact that it made it worse. Although it's possible that... I'm worried about the is grounded check that it would trigger immediately and say, hey, you're still standing on the ground before you actually get to move. Another possibility is to make some invisible geometry, make a thing you're standing on as you're ziplining, so you can't fall. But you need to have some way to turn it off. And there's kind of a cheat you can use, the same thing you use with the use prompt that I can't use in this case, which is you can change teams of things. You can have a zipline prompt only accessible to team 1, and when you're ziplining, you're on team 2. And you can do the same thing and say we have invisible geometry underneath it that only collides with team 2. But you might imagine that someone would want to put this in a game with multiple teams, in which case this would fall apart completely. So you can't do that. So we're going to figure out, one, why this doesn't work. All right, so let's look at that approach. So our script used to have a weight in it. By Control Z, we get a weight. So we set the gravity scale, and then we set all these other things. What I'm going to do is put a print right here. So we can't even stop ziplining until we started ziplining. And starting ziplining is down here. So that's after the weight. So why does this not work? Okay, definitely hit. If I make this weight really long, let's make it like 3. Okay, that worked. Why did a little bit of time not work? 1, 2, 3. And I found the closest point after I did all that. 3. Okay, so I want to know why I failed there. Am I ending overlap? Let's find out. So instead of putting a print in here, we're going to put them in all the places we call that function. So if you're ending overlap, that's 1. If we've pushed the button, that I doubt is the case, but we might as well check. And if we're here, we're going to do even smarter. Okay, so we have 4 cases. There's possibilities they're both true. That seems unlikely, but might as well. 1, 2, 3. CA. All right, so C was you're grounded. Okay, so that actually is a problem in multiplayer. And then A was we ended the overlap. Okay, so this one doesn't actually check that you're. Let me show you. If I just do this, it'll print out A. That doesn't have the check inside the. So C was the problem. So even in single player preview, interesting. So I think what we do, we want to know if the player became grounded, not if they were grounded. I guess if you're, we actually just want to put a delay in here, right? Because imagine you make a zipline. Imagine you have a zipline exactly like this one, and I stand here and look this way and hit F. It should do nothing, right? Or not move you very far. I will never become not grounded. It's not high enough, and I'm moving in a direction that's not changing that at all. So I don't need to know that I became grounded, but I need it to not trigger on the first or second frame of the thing, in case I start on the ground to press the button. Presumably the ziplines generally go up. Maybe you have a zipline over the edge of a flat building and you slide your feet a little bit. That might not work. So I think what we want to do here is give it a little bit of delay. For the first second of ziplining, this does not happen. Incidentally, if I take out this weight, this works in single player suddenly, but in multiplayer it did not work. I wonder which one did that. You will find out. Sometimes it does work. Okay, that one was DA. I guess A always happens, so it was D. Speed was too low. All right, let's just give it a grace period. I think both of these checks could benefit from the same grace period. So what's happening is that this check is too quick, even though we set the velocity. That this function might take a bit of a go to the server, set the velocity, send it to the client. The client updates its movement code, says, okay, now we know about our velocity, sends it back to the server, and in that time, the server's like, oh, you were too slow. Your velocity was still 0, I bet. I bet if we take this right here, just print that instead, that it will not be anywhere near the 1,000 or whatever the speed was. 1,000. Core. That didn't print a number at all. That was being grounded. Okay. I have to make it fail again. Won't take too long. Oh, see, my velocity is still high enough. I'm doing that. I see. Oh, no, it worked. Oh, that was interesting. Velocity was a bit off that time. That one. 890. Okay. That was actually pretty fast, but not 1,000. You could argue that I could check the direction of velocity too. Maybe I want to take velocity and actually let's improve this a little bit. We're still going to add our grace period here, but we're going to dot this with zipline forward and stick that in a math.abs. So this is saying what's our velocity along the line of the zip line, because let's see, dotted. Yeah, that should work. Okay. Because if you're moving very fast against the, tangent or orthogonally perpendicular to the zip line, that doesn't actually mean you're on the zip line. We're going to save this to a variable because that line is way too long. Zip line speed. I just realized that I haven't, maybe this is good for streaming. In my Sublime settings, I made it so I could see white space. It's very useful for me to know that if I have inconsistent tabs and spaces, or if I have trailing spaces. But I never, there's a second part to this to make this a little more subtle. That is not in the same settings file, so when I copy my settings over, I end up with these being really bright. That's okay. You probably noticed all these dots in all the spaces. I find it to be pretty useful. All right, so we're going to get rid of, let's leave our prints for now. What we want to do is add a grace period to this. Let's get rid of that guy for now because it's not very useful. Keeps printing. So when you get on a zip line, there is there's a very cheap way to do this and a much better way to do this. The cheap way to do this is to not add you to the array, to just put this as the last line of the function and give a task.wait to it so you don't show up in the array for a second. But that doesn't seem right. You're still ziplining. You still should, for instance, stop ziplining if you get knocked off the zipline or get to the end of it. If it's a very short zipline or you grabbed it the wrong direction, it should just fly you off into space for a second. So I'm going to split this into two tables. We now have too much data. I could have zipline data or something and have it be a table from player to another table, but I think that with only two tables is fine. Zipline start times and zipline binding pressed handles. Okay, so that one is for the event handles. This one is for the time you got on the zipline. So we're going to take all the ones we have now. Ziplining players. That seems correct. Okay, maybe I changed my mind. Yeah, because how do I explain this? This would be fine. It would work. There's sort of a pattern where you don't want your code to have potential states that are just invalid. It's kind of inevitable a lot of the time, but you want to minimize it. In this case, a player could somehow be in one table and not the other, which is not what we're expecting, which is a pretty easy, imaginable thing. And then it's an invalid state, and things might behave very strangely if I never thought of them that way. And additionally, when I say, is a player currently ziplining, do I just check the first table? Like, that sounds feels really bad. So, ziplining player data, we're going to do the other thing I just said. Player to table, handle, start time. Okay. So, ziplining players, I'll have to do a little bit of smart things here. So if we want to check, that's that. If we want to disconnect, we go .handle. And if we want to get rid of the thing, instead of trying to set each part individually, we'll just set the entire player as nil. So it gets rid of the entire table that's there. You're no longer in the table at all. If we player left, same deal. If you want to start, make sure you're not ziplining at all. If we want to check, we check each player. We'll do a check in here in a second for a grace period. Then there was one more ziplining players where we actually set it. Okay. So local player data equals table player data dot handle is this line. Player data dot start time equals time. Okay. I put that whole table in here. Come on. Great. So hopefully, and that's not ziplining players anymore. Is there any more in here? That is it. So with no other changes, this should behave exactly the same. It probably won't. you know, that's some more single player. Okay. Seems to work. Great. So we want to add this check here, this grace period. So we're going to add a variable, grace period length, 1 second. That seems fine. If you're not off the ground 1 second, it's something's gone horribly wrong. And if you are on the ground, 1 second isn't going to be too bad. And maybe it should be shorter, actually. 1 second is surprisingly long. We'll do half a second and try it. So right in here, we have time greater than zipline player data. Let's actually just say this to the variable in the loop. Data dot start time plus, okay. So what we've done is, while we're looping through players looking for these two checks, the ones we want the grace period for, we say, have we passed the grace period? If not, don't even bother checking. Okay, then if we pass the thing, get the speed, say, hey, are they going the right speed? Are they grounded? We're gonna leave these print statements in for a little bit because this might still not work. If I run up to the thing, hit F, I'm ziplining, zipline again, go all the way to the other end. This train has been nothing but trouble. I made it really tall intentionally to make it have a thing to land on, and it's been hard to jump onto the zipline from. Perfect. Okay, so in single player, this seems to work. We don't, oops. Oh, I forgot about that. I'm not gonna fix that. When you pause, it stops your velocity. When you unpause, you're not moving, so it drops you. So this seems to work pretty well in single player. That one did not. I still have a weight in here. There are no weights at all. So from this end, well, I guess it works sometimes. And this is a very poorly placed zipline, right? If someone were to use this in their map, they should not have the bottom be so low. You should have to jump a little bit. Okay. BB 0.0, oh, so that was the pause. So these last ones are C. Which one is C? Grounded. Okay, great. So it took a half second and then said, you're still grounded. Get off. That makes sense. The zipline's placed poorly. That's working correctly. Now if I go to multiplayer, single multiplayer, press F, immediately took off. In the wrong position, can't do much about that. Kind of looks like it hurt a little bit. Jump the other way, great. It didn't drop me. Well, this is really much better than I was worried. Look at that. I'm trying to get it to drop me on the bottom if I press F too late, but it doesn't seem to be happening. This is what I'm going to publish in community content. If someone uses it in a map, it might find that it doesn't work very well with latency. Usually multiplayer preview is great to test your things and all you need. Sometimes something like this that probably depends on latency a lot, it may not be. All right, so we're going to take out these print statements. Don't need those. There's at least one more in here. There's that guy. Print, nothing else. Okay. The last thing I want to do, zipline speed, seems like something someone might want to configure. I have a pretty consistent standard about properties on the root, properties on the script, hard-coded constants, and then sometimes I just hard-code values right into things, right? You'll see like this. These are values that don't even make sense to change. This depends on the size of the model. Player, you know, if you scale your player, okay, maybe you want to come in here and change this. Otherwise, or this, for example. Well, that's another thing I need to change. Oh, yeah. Reset correct settings. Okay. Some of these just are values that no one would want to configure these at all. Some of these, okay, this is definitely something you might want to configure. And some of these are things that should be on the root, like the zipline speed. So we'll put that on here. Got a D instance. Speed. It can be helpful to give tooltips to all these properties. All the components themselves have those. It takes a while, so for things I share in community content, sometimes I don't make tooltips. Speed, if you can't figure out what speed does, that seems like it pretty much explains itself. If I grab that line, go back into here, it's going to go in its own category because it's a property of the root that there weren't any yet. Speed. And then we look for this guy. Ooh, it's in a bunch of places. Great. That's amazing. 3 different places. Get this out of here. All right, so the other problem here, this sets a bunch of properties on the player. Things that you would find on your player settings object. It doesn't actually check what was there before. It doesn't set them back to the right values. That's the worst, because then if you make a game where you, say, have different gravity or different movement control mode, and then you use the zip line, it will just set you back to the default and break your game. That's really bad. The next level up here is to at least check what values I'm overriding, save them off to variables, and set them back. That's probably what I'll do here. It is functional, but there are still ways it can break. If your game wanted to change your settings in the middle, for example, if you had anything else that tried to configure this at the same time, let's say a player uses a anti-gravity attack on you while you're on the zip line, they might break in the same way. You know, they use the anti-gravity attack and then jump off the zip line, you got your gravity back immediately when it was supposed to leave you anti-gravity for a while or something like that. Or they use it on you right before you start the zip line, and then when you get off the zip line, you're going to have anti-gravity forever. So it's not great, but it's pretty good. Another way to do this that has some problems as well is to actually ask this person who uses this template to have a reference to the player settings object, and when we get off, we just apply the object completely. There's an API call for that. I open up Chrome here. Core API, settings, player settings, yes. Apply to player. But that sets every single setting on this thing. And if they have anything else that's configuring other things, maybe they have a mount upgrades that you can get that change your mount speed, then you're going to zipline, get off, and suddenly your mount speed's back to the default value. That's not great either. In the future, we will have multiple solutions. This one is something I'm going to create on stream. That is a, let's find it here. It is status effects. So I'm going to write, eventually, this will take some time, a big system and scripts that you could use in a game to have a whole bunch of temporary effects that handles all the, sort of looking for, conflicts itself. It would be helpful for someone who builds a game from the ground up and always uses it, but it won't work when people have other pieces as well. If you use some other scripts with it, it'll stop working. But as long as your game always uses the system, you could handle these sort of things and smoothly. I want to build, one of the things I'll be building on my stream is an actual full game, and it will make use of this a lot. So we're going to have attacks that slow players and attacks that stun players and all that sorts of stuff. And we need them to be rapid fire, apply a whole bunch at once and not have it break. There actually is, if you look at the Spell Shot game, you can find some of those. It has a similar system written by a coworker of mine that is pretty effective and does a lot of those things. Okay, so we're going to save off the things we're overwriting here, which are specifically these 4 values. We're not going to set you mounted again. That doesn't make any sense. We set your position, velocity. That's not something the game stored, but these 4 values we need to save off. And ziplining player data. Maybe we could put those in the table itself rather than, yeah, I think we need it per player. This is really good. We had a table now. It's got a bunch of stuff. Previous, let's put this on the next line. Or the previous line. There's sort of like a pattern here. If you put a comment on the same line, it should fit. And if it's not on the same line, it should be before it. To put up here. And don't need a tab. Start time, previous gravity scale. Not gonna fit. Previous movement control mode. Previous animation stance. Previous, almost fit. What was the 4th one? Can mount. Maybe, just maybe, I make this more than one line. I could do a real big block comment here. Let's see. these are the 4 values in the table. And down here, we're going to change this order a little bit. So this doesn't need any of these. We're going to put these underneath. A lot of times these things aren't dependent on each other at all. You can just do things all at random. So we're going to save these 4 values into our table. Player data is a lot of the same code. Previous, oh, I put it in the comments so it auto-completed. That's great. Thank you, Sublime. Just gonna copy this line 3 times and copy down. Can mount. Yep. Did I put that correctly? Gravity scale, move control mode, move control mode, and can mount. Okay, got them all. And the easy part is to do the opposite down here. So instead of setting these things to magic numbers that are the defaults, we set them to what they were before. I wish there were a hotkey for this, but I'm literally just inverting these equal signs. Someone's going to tell me there's a way to do this, but this isn't too slow. I'm willing to do things manual if it's not too bad. Okay. Let us test this a little bit, and then I'll publish it and move on. Well, that moved me. Aha! Script error. Player data. Okay, 66. Aha! We don't have player data. That's a good thing that I didn't do that, or didn't just publish it. So I can save it to a variable. That's probably what I should do. Local player data equals this. Okay. Act. I can put it up here and limit access to the same table. And I can use it in every line except for the last line. The last line is to set it. These are 2 different variables pointing at the same data, but if I set this one to nil, then I have this one still pointing at the data. I don't care about this one. It's going to go out of scope at the end of this function. I care about this one being nil so that it's not around anymore. All right. Can jump. Spin around. Okay, if I start at the bottom a little bit, move a little bit. Oh, that one took me a while. I guess the half-second window is kind of, maybe it needs to be a smaller window, or should be. That's fine. Try multiplayer, and then we'll give it a publish. All right, you see the funny angle in multiplayer? That is known. Great, now we have a zip line. Let's go over to here. Published community content. Zip line. And zip line that players can ride in either direction. Should be placed so that the player's feet never touch the ground while hanging from it, or just barely at the ends. Anything else someone would need to know to use this thing? I don't think so. I'm going to cut that text for a second so I can cancel out of here and update it because I didn't do that. All right, now we're gonna publish it. Oop, all right. Zipline screenshots. A screenshot of my majestic zipline. Maybe I want to screenshot while I'm playing on it. That's a good idea. The use prompt might go away, I hope so. Screenshots, yeah, there we go. Don't show the UI. Perfect. And I will stop the preview maybe. Can I do that? That one. I believe that being in preview mode when you publish might not work. But it might. Okay. Perfect. Oh, did I call it a zipliner? I totally did. That's unfortunate. I saw that the last second. Can I change the name when I republish? I can. That's amazing. I didn't know I could do that. All right, so if we take our filter off, look at that. There's a zipline. Version 2, maybe. What is up next on our to-do list? Zipline's out of here. Game portal. Okay. Yeah, we need that. This is very simple. There is a function, a very, very useful function that many of you are familiar with. Oh God, what have I done? Transfer to game. You pass in a game ID and it teleports you to the game. I think it would be useful to have a simple component that does this for you a little bit. So what I found a lot working with non-technical people, when we were trying, one of the very strengths of core is we want people who are not technical to be able to use it and build things and have some success. Be able to drag pieces in from community content, from core content, and make some logic without having to dive into scripting and try and get frustrated. That is not the thing that they're good at. There's plenty, this is why I don't make art. This is why I have a single green hill. And when you say to them, this happened a lot with coworkers early on, is you'd say, sure, this is very easy. Here's the Lua function you need. And just the process of setting up a thing to call that function at all is a lot of steps and very intimidating to many people. So saying, here's your magic function that gets you another game, they say, well, how do I even do that? Where do I get how do I hook it up to a thing? How do I make a trigger that presses it? And what often happened even with some people who actually did beat through that, they were persistent and found a way to make it work, is they ended up with a thing that kind of worked, but didn't work in the right way or didn't consider some outcomes. And they'd say, well, I spent a bunch of time on this and I made this thing that works in single player but not multiplayer. Or if I come at the wrong angle, it doesn't work or something like that. And then it feels really bad. So I want to make something simple and easy. All they have to do is type in this string and it works. Maybe have a couple options, like do you need confirmation? Does it ask you, are you sure? Which, surprisingly to me, this seems obvious, but we've never seen that kind of thing show up. I guess with the way the triggers work, if you press F and it says on your screen F teleport to Core Royale, then people expect that. That's your confirmation. You press the button, you read the text. You don't need another thing to pop up. And that's probably a simpler and better experience than doing some custom UI so that when you touch this portal, it pops up a thing that says, want to go to Core Royale? Yes, no. That's a bunch of work that does basically the same thing. So we won't do that. We will just do this in the same map. I know this map is called Ziplines. It's got a lot of space in it. We can put a portal in here. So we're going to make something simple looking. I had to style it. So this is going to be a real component, I think. Unless I come across some real reasons why this shouldn't be. But it should come in here. I will get it in there this week or so. So... I shouldn't promise that. I've run into all sorts of problems, and it'll never, Anyway, I think this could be a real component. I think it doesn't have anything janky or weird about it. And in that case, I have an artistic style that's not very good in terms of an artist, but it's consistent, and it makes things simple, and it fits the purpose of using the right colors to match core stuff, and making it very obvious that this is like to be replaced. You're not stuck with this. It's not like, if I come into here and I use 3D objects and I grab this bench piece, that other bench piece, it's not obvious to a new user that they have the ability to do all sorts of other things. They look at this and say, oh, well, here's what I have. I'll try to build something out of this. And not know they can go change the colors and change the materials and use this in ways that were never intended. Maybe this is what has happened? Drag that guy. Maybe you use this, you embed it in a wall and use this as a magnet or something. You know, there are all sorts of weird uses for these things. Users don't even think about that. They look at this and say, this is what I have, and I'll build with it and not realize what's available to them. So when you make it, if I made it look kind of good, people would then assume that that's what it has to be and not know they can make it better. If we look at the things that I have made in here, like the capture points, there's a capture point. Very plain, but it's lit. It's consistent colors. It's red when I load the map because it's not mine. If I go stand on it, it will probably turn blue in a few seconds. There it is. That was an assault point. Okay, I didn't actually look which one I grabbed. The assault point is a one team's defending, one team's attacking. The team that's attacking captures it and then is disabled as if you would move on to the next point. If I... What else is in here? The door. It's orange. Yeah, the door's got a few colors. They kind of match our logo. The double doors are the same. Many of these do not have actual pieces in the world. Loot spawner. I mean, they're triggers in the world, but not actually geometry. Player launcher. I just realized that's red. That doesn't match our colors at all. All right, another note for me. Player launcher colors. Point of interest. Resource pickup. So that is a gem. Same colors. I think it's a single. Yes, it's a single mesh. That's one of our primitives. Sliding door, another door, and teleporter. You see how these all look very similar. Is that off center? It's not. Okay. The lighting just makes it really look bad. So we're gonna make a portal, which will look kind of like one of these, but a doorway that you walk through, I think. It's kind of the mental expectation for something called a portal is that you walk through it. How should we do that? Maybe it's a circle. Maybe it's just like a standing gateway that you walk through. You could embed it in the ground if you want, for example. Or we could use one of the portal materials that looks really cool. Or we could just leave it empty. I think having a material in there, even though it kind of is much more advanced than this, gives it something that makes it clear that what it is. So we're going to take a 3D object. First we're going to make a group. Create group. Portal. What is my thing? Oh, not that. Game portal. Maybe that's what I should call it. To differentiate it from the sort of overloaded terms, teleporter and portal, and between parts of the world, between parts of a game, between multiple games. Is it one way or two way? It's not consistent that people will always think of the right thing when they look at one of these. So we're going to find us a ring of sorts. Basic shapes. There are a lot of names for the same shape, so if I search for like torus, I might not find anything. Torus, yep. Donut, there's a donut. Ring. Those are UI textures. Let's static mesh it. There's a ring. A thinner ring, probably. Oh. Not the same size ring. Interesting. I've got a bone to pick. Well, that's ring 01. Is there another ring in here somewhere? Ring. There is. Why do we have ring 01? Who knows? The question is then, do I want this to be a circle or I guess circular ring? Like, is the cross section if I cut it a circle, or do I want it to be a squarish thing? I think the thin ring will do what we need here. We're going to make sure I snap to grid, so we rotate 9 degrees, bring it up a little bit. And then, how do we do a portal? Can we make a circular portal? I sure hope so. We could put a simple, like another material in this thing that's just a, has some wavy pattern or something. Let's look at the, what was that called? Oh boy. Might not be a VFX. Portal? Portal VFX. Look at that. Hey. Let's put them inside this guy. Whoops, inside that guy. Zero out their positions. Sure. Then move the thing itself. These had funny rotations to start with. Let's do a nice integer scale. Can I jump through that? How convenient. Oh no. I can jump through that. I probably want it a little bit bigger though, it's kind of tight. Let's give it a 5 scale. And this guy we're going to rotate. You can see it from both sides. We're going to scale it down. This thing's huge. Apparently. Of course, look at all these shapes. Well, luckily the first one was like, what is this nonsense? Is that a diamond or the... Alright. Portal spread. Oh, I see. It had a scale factor of its own. Let's set this back to 1 or set this to 0.5 maybe. Interesting. Edge distance. It's pretty cool. I want the, I think this thing has a bunch of advanced settings on it. Yeah, I want the edge to line up and not be doing this wavy stuff, right? Because this would make sense if you didn't have a border around it. Ooh, that's really bright. Set you 3. Winter evening. Oh my god, this has materials on it. Nope, don't need that. View distortion amount. So this shows us, oh I see, this is the thing that's showing us. Winter evening, this blue sky, desert morning. Where does it take you? Somebody using this would want to set it up to be wherever they want to go, or capture this nonsense where it can be another part of your map. It's alright. I call it nonsense because it's madness that this works. Hello, Ninja James 116. Happy to see you. First chatter all night. Toxic sky. Let's go to space. That seems cool. Distortion amount. How blurry do we want our endpoint? By default, a little bit. Wavy. Sci-fi. Costing, sure. Swirl element distance. Oh my. Edge distortion. Hey, that's what we wanted to turn off. Great. Speed. It's kind of unnerving when you change it, but I like a slower speed. I think that's better. Default there, 80. Sure, I don't want to change too many settings on this thing. Okay, it needs to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to set this to 0.5, too big. Is this the one that ready to go out? No, that's not the one I wanted. One of these made it bigger and smaller. Portal spread, this guy. 5 is too much, and 4. Perfect. Alright, we have a portal. We're going to do a little bit of colors here. Which is to say, I don't remember where my color thing is, so I'm going to steal them off with these. I have some reference colors. There's 3 of them. They are gray, the orange, and there's a blue. And I was careful about using the blue because it's almost exactly the same color you get when it's a friendly team object. But it's there, and it could be used in this case. Not sure. So we're going to take the ring and give it the basic material. This is the material I use for all of the components. Simple. And give it a default, a little bit embedded in the ground. Is kind of how you want this, right? You want to should spawn next to it. Ooh. You can walk through it. It still looks like a portal, obviously. It occurred to me with the zip line that maybe hitting crouch should drop you off the zip line as well. In fact, that seems pretty likely. Maybe we'll do that after this portal. Make a note, or else I will definitely forget. Zip line, crouch to drop. Okay, easy. So I think we want the edge of this to be gray, and then we want to use that orange tint to make sure that it matches with what's in there. So this guy right here, we're going to find the door has this color right here. Copy it. This guy over here. Paste. Now we're gray. Okay, copy the door again. Copy the orange. And back over here to our portal VFX. And it's got 3 colors. Let's hit paste and see. Oh, that's already the color it is, basically. I mean, it may be slightly different, but it is so close. And having the variety looks a lot better than trying to set the whole thing to one color, right? If I go to paste, that looks really bland. Okay, so what does this need? It needs a trigger. Maybe. I like being able to give it a confirmation. I talked before. I like using the built-in trigger F to do something as a confirmation. If I walk up to this and press F and it says portal to this game or something, then I don't need a yes, are you sure confirmation. But our triggers are not this shape. Let's create a trigger. Get in here, set position in here, hit V. That is the trigger we have here. They don't have to be this shape though. We can make a sphere or a capsule. The problem with the sphere or capsule is that they will stick out. And neither shape really supports flattening. A capsule can't, I'll show you in fact. Let's drag the capsule over here. I can make the capsule long and skinny, but I can't make it short and flat. It refuses to get wider than it is long. So I think a box will do fine. I know our trigger is it's not a box, but if we make it roughly the shape of the portal, if you touch that, you're already pretty close. We'll make it a little bit thinner. And when you want to hit F to interact, it actually checks in front of you a little bit to see if you overlap with that. So if you stand here or here or here, we'll play with it. It'll probably be exactly what we need. A note here, the functionality of this portal is to send you to another game. For obvious reasons, that doesn't work in preview mode. It actually just does nothing. Because if it were to work, it would stop you editing your game. Maybe you'd lose saved work. It could be a problem. So in preview mode, you hit F, nothing happens. You just hope it works. We'll actually publish a test game and try it out to make sure it works. I'm not that confident in myself to believe this works. All right, so game, portal server, we need a script. This thing will be entirely on the server, I believe. And we want the ring to have collision. The VFX could be on the client. I don't know if that's actually, well, like this gives us gives us one additional object on the client in the same setup everywhere else. That being said, the VFX objects are often made intending to be on the client only, and sometimes they behave strangely or not at all when they're not on the client. So I'm going to put that in client context. Move everything up here. Do nice and orderly. Alright, so this guy has reference to this, which will have the properties on it. Reference to the trigger, that's all we need. This is going to say component root, because that is what all of the components do, rather than having it named after the thing itself. You'll see resource pickup, component root. Root, no, it doesn't have one. One of these has a component root on it. There we go, component root. Lots of things have component root. So we have component root on here. We have a trigger. And we need some properties on the component root itself. We need destination game. And you could set on here, there's a kind of a trade-off here. We want the components to be usable without you digging too deep. A new user pulls these things out and just looks at the properties on them, that's all they need to know. At the same time, we could put some fields on here that basically are just exactly the field on the trigger already. Is it interactable? What does it say? That would be the thing that you'd care about. And it seems a little, in fact, kind of bad to put it in two places, because especially since it would just be overriding these values. So if somebody more experienced user typed in and said, oh, I want to change the trigger to be not interactable or interactable and press this button and it did nothing, that would feel very strange. So instead, we just expect use whatever the trigger says. Interactable, portal to my other game. Another core world, maybe. Take world to another game, core world. So by default, we want it to be interactable. I would imagine some rare cases where someone would want to force the player without their confirmation. It could be you win the level and it takes you another game. It could be you jumped into a very obvious large portal and that's what else you expect it to do. But if it's just a thing that looks like this in your world somewhere, you don't want a person to bump into it and something be sent away and be like, oh, I was having fun and I just, wanted to continue on with whatever I was doing. So those are our defaults. Destination game is going to be blank. I could make an example game full of stuff. I've done some small example things. That seems like a bit much. For example, if you look at the static player equipment, many of you may be familiar with this. It allows you to make sure every player in the game always has an equipment. If you never set it up, you get a top hat. And it follows the Magic style guide, my style guide. It has the right colors, got a look on it. It doesn't fit my hat very well. That is, I made that. It's up here with all of our other components. Okay. So this script has two properties, and we didn't even open the script. And then the portal itself has one property. And for reference, we're going to take a simpler script. Let's find the teleporter. This guy. Okay, so we've got a copyright at the top. It's an official component. It's November 2019. This copyright, for context here, basically says you can use it for whatever you want. The only thing you can't do it is say it's your own and sell it. Effectively. I'm not a lawyer, but you can put it in your games, you can use it. It's for everyone to use. Just don't claim it's yours. We have internal custom properties, and we have user exposed properties. I like this styling instead, so I changed them. There's a fairly common styling from programmers to capitalize for all caps for things that are constants. And from the point of view of the running game or the script, these are constants. They never change the properties on the things. All right. Let's see what we have next. Check user properties. This is the thing I do in the official component to say, did they type in something sensible? Is there anything here? Could they have forgotten something or whatever? And in our case, I can't check that the game actually exists, but I can check that if they left it blank, or that it's not a long enough string. If we look at the API here, it should have at least some numbers and some text, or I believe the old style, some of the portals you'll find might just be a bunch of numbers and letters. Either way, it should look like one of those. If it doesn't, we want to be helpful and tell them how to set it up. They put it in the game, maybe they're a new user. So we take this guy and set it in here. Let's say, so this is a string. My experience with Lua strings is actually fairly limited. Let us scroll all the way to the bottom here. Built-in Lua functions. Reference name. Okay, this is the official Lua reference. And a lot of these things are available in core. So if I type string dot, eventually I'll get, let's try a specific function and find it. There we go. Here's a section on strings. So we have string.byte, string.char, dump, find, format, What I want is to know how long my string is. And this might be very easy to do. String down len. Perfect. Okay. I don't know how short these can be, so I don't know what real recording here. And maybe before I actually add this to the core content, I'll go check with the people who set this up, set the backend, the game IDs, and all that stuff that I'm not familiar with, and say what numbers should I check? How rigorous can I be without worrying about how it changes in the future, right? If I say this has to be 16 characters, and then in the future we find a way that some games should have an 8-character or a 12-character name, then I'm going to have to go change my components, and some games will act strangely, and we don't want that. So, I'm looking for this tab again, sorry. Transfer player, there we go, transfer to game. So I'm going to say for now, I'm just going to type in 8. If it's not 8 characters, you probably don't have the right thing. We're going to do an error. This cannot function without a proper game ID. It does nothing. Error is lowercase because it's a Lua function. It could be a warning if it's not. Sometimes these guys warn. So we just fix up the value and go on error. So warn will print out this warning and then just keep running. Error will print out this value and stop the script, which is what we want. Destination game missing or invalid. See. Suppose I'm just going to copy this text right there. Oh. Can I get a new line in here? A lot of text. I don't know. Let's see what. This probably got a multi-line string. A way to multi-line string. And it might be one that actually has a new line in it. That's okay. Double brackets. Interesting. I've never seen that before. Let's see what it does. That's why the comments work that way. Commenting a whole bunch of multi-line stuff. Okay. Well, there's an error. We still put the end because the thing that compiles the string a little bit, or compiles the script, will complain if it's not matched. But there's an error. This should actually be exactly the name of the field. So if we look at this right here, it should tell them exactly what they need to fill in. And then we want to handle both the case where it's an interactable trigger and the player interacts with it, and the case where it's not an interactable trigger and they just touch it, begin overlap. I could make one function and connect it to both events. I don't like having the function connected to an event not have the same name, because then it makes your code very hard to read. I've read through other people's code, and I'm just like, where's this function coming from? Where's it getting called? And I go to the bottom and it says, trigger on begin overlap, connect, kill player. And I was like, well, I didn't know, I had to get all the way to the bottom and just kind of settle there. So we're gonna have two functions. On begin overlap, trigger other, and function on interacted, trigger player. These functions you can find under trigger here, interacted event, begin overlap event. The begin overlap event takes an other because it could be an object. Objects and triggers can overlap with each other. Interacted event, it's a player. No one else has an F key on the keyboard. No one else has a keyboard at all. There is an initialize comment way down at the bottom of all these scripts. And we're going to connect these functions. Another thing I had done a few times and then decided was a bad pattern was to conditionally connect these. Actually check if it's interactable down here and only connect the event handler if so. Because then the same problem happens if you're reading through the script and you haven't gotten to the bottom yet, you find this function and you say, well, that seems like it would be happening. And you find out at the bottom that some other condition or property made it not even get connected. That makes it hard to follow. So the function should always be connected. They should always do what they say they are and then have the logic be inside of them. So if other is a player, that's a string. So we don't want to try to teleport things that aren't players. And not trigger dot is interactable. If it's interactable, if it's not interactable, then we begin overlap. Otherwise, we definitely don't want to do anything when you touch this thing. Other transfer to game, destination game. Easy. I just realized that should be down here. Properties on the root. Okay, so all this does is very simple logic, send you to a game. Uninteracted, we don't even have to check either of these properties. You can only interact with it if it's interactable, so we don't check that. And you have to be a player. So we just copy this line down here, change it to player. I think this is the whole thing. We're gonna do a little bit of testing. It's gonna, for one, it's gonna error immediately because we don't have a string in there. So we're going to make the template and then add some properties of it and try to see if that at least gets down to here. And then we're going to publish a test game and try it. The last thing we need to make this an official component, well, okay, here's one thing. We need comments on every function. Every function has these 2 lines of comment that says what it does. We're going to copy one of those over here and then change it. So this is what it returns, nothing. Luckily, I found the exact same function, so it takes the same things. In fact, since they're taking it from the teleporter, this does almost the same thing. Uninteracted, trigger player. If the trigger is not interactable, a player who touches it to the destination game. Okay. That fits. We've got our hard line way over here. It would, I normally script at about this font size, so making it bigger so it's readable in stream. That's fine. Interacted. Portal, a player who touches, who uses this to the destination game. Very clear. A lot of people who would be looking at these are very unfamiliar with Lua, with core, possibly even programming at all. So you want to make it kind of clear. Hope that they can figure out as much as they can from this. All right. The last thing we're missing is a tooltip. Components have tooltips on every property on the root itself. So this tooltip, the ID of the game that this will portal players to. And I'm going to copy that exact same example string out of the documents. Transfer to game. Bam. Okay. So if I come here and hit shift equals, which starts me at my camera, bam, error. Look at that. I don't have the value it needs. Take portal to another core world. Does nothing because the script isn't running. If I, we're gonna make this into a template. Game portal, perfect. For some of these, for a lot of my components, there's a folder called Geo, which is short for geometry. Excuse me, and it is just saying this is where you can change things. Not change how this looks, go in here. For this one, I could follow that pattern. It only has a single ring, so it's not a lot to battle. I guess the portal is also. I don't know that I've had one that had client and server geometry before that badly. The capture point might Geo-collision, geo-visual, that's right, okay. So it had a lot of pieces. This white ring is like 8 pieces, right? Yeah. And then the collision is just a single. You can't even see it. Whereas this guy is. Let's think about that a little bit. I could put this in a group. That's the instance. Control the G to put it in a group, and we'll call it Geo. It's not like you're going to fill your game with 1,000 of these. If you have a lot of portals in your portal game is going to be very confusing. And your players will not be playing it for very long because they'll be portaled to other worlds. I can actually just put this client context in that group too. That seems fine. Okay. I'm going to drag it down here. It's going to tie it to the instance. Fine. Just to reorder it. So if I go to here and I find this examples text, I can't copy that anymore. So we want this guy. We're going to go to Core Royale. Stick it in there. Perfect. Play. Forgot to be in the right spot. Okay, so now it didn't error. Press F. Unable to transfer players outside of play mode. Perfect. It sure can't. Otherwise, I'd be in the middle of editing a game and somewhere else. So that worked. Let's do a real test of this before we publish it. Zip lines. I'm going to make this as hidden as you can. Oh, whatever. I'll have to check something, right? Screenshots. Make it private. I don't need to muck up a game. The things that other people can find with a game that no one would have any fun playing. And review and publish. And I will go delete this game at a later time. Or maybe now. I think I can do it. I think creators can do that. We're going to copy the. Actually, this is the game page. This should have been in the browser. That's fine. So now I will close out of this. Go over here. I'll hit play. Let's get this. Great. We're going. Okay. World of components. Press F, load screen. Great. Corel takes a little bit to load. It's got just a few more polygons than my game. Corel. And no one's here to play with me. That's fine. I'm not going to play right now. Alright, so that worked. Go back to edit zip lines. We're not going to publish this because it'll become an actual component. So I will simply make a note. And add it as soon as I can. There's a pattern where I generally give an advice not to promise anything, which I will give the reasoning for here so you, I guess, so people understand. Is I could say, hey, look, I made this thing, you see it working. I could say, I promise I'm going to add this to core next week. And then I go to, I work from home tomorrow, and it turns out that portals have this horrible cost and we have to disable them for a month, or some, it's very unlikely, but there's all sorts of weird ways that this could fall apart. Maybe this thing didn't actually work correctly. Maybe I just get sick, or it's something really, really more important for me to do for the week. Maybe I'm fixing bugs. And all my promise did was not help people. So really, whenever I say, okay, here's the thing I'm doing, I'm going to add it as soon as I can. Hopefully that's next week. That's pretty likely. But, it could not be sometimes. All sorts of things change. So the last thing to do is remove that. It should be empty by default. It's okay that this makes an error as default. We don't want to send everyone to Corel. Maybe we do. That might... I actually don't know that. This is probably better to be empty. At least make them aware to think about it, rather than dragging into the world and hitting play and being confused. or I guess publishing a game and playing something being Core AL. It would be a very confusing experience. Okay, so this has a tooltip. It's got comments. Great. Back to here. We've got the portal, zipline, crouch to drop. Let's add that to our zipline. That'd be very simple. We were working on the zipline earlier. It had a check for the spacebar. If you hit the spacebar, it jumped you. Well, we're just going to add a similar check. Else if binding equals, let's look at our binding list. Ability bindings, open that in a new tab. Left control is, so this feels a little bad for what it's worth. This is one of the reasons zipline is not an official component, is that someone might bind this to a different button. They might like C to be crouch or caps lock or who knows, maybe a mouse button. And I'm just picking a button around saying, you're hitting left control. They could go into the script and change it, but that's for them. You know, this is, whoever makes this map is going to be the same binding for everyone, but different players will have different bindings playing the same map. For now, this is what we got to do. All we do is end zipline. We don't change your velocity at all. Or previously we launched you upward. This time, not doing that. Let's try this. You know what? C is my crouch button. It's not control. Let's change that to match. I hope that's the default. C 41. All right, perfect. And it made me crouch. Can I change that? That seems like not what you want. So when you jump and crouch in midair, you land and crouch, which feels good. Or it is a good thing. Generally, you don't do it so early. It's catch the case where you crouch right before you hit the ground and you don't want to like have to smash it multiple times, especially since smashing multiple times does that. You want to push it once and know you'll be crouched. But when I do this, that's not what I want. Can I change if a player is crouched? Set crouch. Is crouched. Read right. Is crouch enabled? Is crouch jumping? That's for crouch. Is crouching. Read only. Well, that's a bummer. I can probably just call this, set it twice, and disable them. Let's find out. So disable crouching for a fraction of a second. Did not work. Let's see what happens if we disable it permanently. Interesting. We need to wait in the middle. Hackery abounds. Okay, that worked. The problem here, the very minor problem that I'm almost ready, this is an acceptable level of hackery for a community content thing, is what if their game already did not enable crouching? They had already written a script that did this, and suddenly this thing turns it back on again. Maybe that's okay. Maybe, is it a setting on the player setting object? Let's find out. Crouch is enabled. Sure is. Okay, so they could very easily uncheck that and then be disappointed this turns it back on again. So if player dot is crouch enabled, then do that. Otherwise, do nothing. Perfect. If it was already off, we don't need this. Put a blank line there, and one quick sanity test. One more quick sanity test is to run multiplayer and see if my little hack there still works. Does not. Ah, bummer. Okay, now we're getting to the land of hackery I don't like. So task.wait for 1 frame. There's a common pattern. It is very common for to run into a problem that can be solved with a small wait and solved only under certain conditions, and then when you make your game published and you have latency, it doesn't work as well, and people are very sad that it doesn't work, or they thought, hey, I tried it on my machine, and then it causes problems. So there are cases where a single frame wait is actually a consistent guaranteed solution. It's waiting for a single thing to happen on the same context, not waiting for networking. It's just saying, hey, we need something to run on the server. We set the thing, we run the thing, we set the thing again. The frame's always the same shape. In this case, this could be a, this doesn't work at all, or if it works in multiplayer, not single player, depends on latency. You can give it a bigger number. There are a few places where I'm like, I'm okay with this. The latency can only be so large. And if the gameplay feel of it still feels fine, if your latency is a lot larger, or if the number's pretty big, then this is fine. If I do 1 second, I'm very surprised that didn't work. Maybe this hack just doesn't work in multiplayer. Interesting. I would say, if your latency is 1 second, or even half a second, you got bigger problems, and the fact that some scripts don't quite work is okay. If the designer is trying to wait for 4 frames to make, because that's the latency they have when they're testing on their machine, then things are going to fall apart when someone has 100 milliseconds or 200 milliseconds of lag. All right, so this fundamentally doesn't seem to work. There is another trick we could do. So one thing that nZipline did is it let you mount again if you could. Can mount is can toggle mount, really. It's can you mount or dismount. I can turn off your crouching state by mounting and unmounting you. And I think that doesn't even show you anything. So we don't even need this anymore. Let's try that. Oops. Player set mounted. Mounted. True and then false. Let's see if this works. It does not. I wonder if that actually uncrouches you, but doesn't get rid of the flag that says, hey, I want to crouch in the future. If we add another task.wait here, we're in the land of hackery. That worked. Okay. Now let's see how this works in multiplayer. I have hope. Welcome, new people. Nope. Well, bummer. One last attempt. We'll give that wait a much bigger time. I can't put it between them, or else you'll very obviously mount and not and dismount. I guess 1 second is long enough that I'm not even hitting it before I hit the ground. 1,000. Maybe this solution doesn't work in multiplayer. Because if I do this, and I hit C, I should crouch, and then a second later, I should toggle out of crouch, and it doesn't even work. That's not that bad a problem. You only crouch out of this feels pretty good. And I think it is an improvement. I will just remove the hack because it doesn't work. And I'll update this template. Come down here. I'm so sad that I misnamed this the first time, but that is okay. Here it is being updated again. Okay. Let us see what we have next. We did our zip lines, grapple. Do we want to do that, or do we want to move on to one of these other silly things I thought of? I have many ideas. Stream art. Do I want to make some stream art? What let's see, if I look at my own Twitch page, I have an about me and about core and schedule, and they are just blocks of text that look kind of crappy. We can use the UI system in core, add some coloring, hopefully, to make something better. This is going to be a pretty simple foray into this. UI elements, just an image, and let's look at our available images. Generally, you want something that just kind of has the shape of text, a wide, rounded, like this guy. Background, maybe some gradient, maybe. Maybe a ring on top of something. An outline, let's see. Start with this very rounded one. You get kind of that shape. That's not what I want. Let's stretch out. I wonder what size these things are supposed to be. Let me look at Twitch for a second and see what it says. Images will be scaled to 320 pixels wide. Doesn't say anything about their height. I guess you can pick what height you want. Look at some other Twitch pages. They have very different shapes of this sort of thing. I think just having a header for mine is what I'm looking for. How wide is this? So I'm running 1440p on this monitor, which is 2560 wide. And if I pull up my calculator, 320, it said. Is that what divided by 2560. That's a times. How to use a calculator. 1/8. It's 1/8 of my screen wide. If I were to, how can I do this? So I could use F11 to make this full screen. Then I have a reference point. I can, it's kind of funny. The UI system in core is built around a 1920 by 1080 resolution. So I need 1/8 of that as the width value here. So 1920 divided by 8 is 240. So my width, 240, that's a lot smaller than what I currently had. This seems a little bit tall if I'm going to write text horizontally in it. I know this looks kind of small. Maybe I'll make it twice as big and scale it down. These corners look pretty bad at this size, right? Because they're designed to scale in a what's called a 9-slice mechanism, where the corners stay the same scale. Above a certain size, when they get small, they get squished down, and I don't like that. So we're gonna make this twice as big as this. We're gonna do 480 by 100. So the corners are nice and round again. Okay, so we need a couple pieces. We need this. I'll try a second one on top of it with a border texture. I think I saw one that kind of matched this shape. Hopefully exactly matches this shape. For gradients, I don't know how much I want to go crazy with this. But like this guy, for example. Or this one, let's see this one. I can make one of these a different color. Go for my purple theming. Make the first one a gradient. Back up. Where's the gradient? A darkish purple. Get some white writing on there maybe. This will be great. And then text box. Oops. Just got containers out of nowhere. So the container is the whole thing, and these have some crazy offsets on them. I don't want that. What I want to do is make a panel. More containers. Thanks. Get all you inside there. And then you see that the panel can come over here, and then we can just take these offsets and zero them out, and things overlap nicely. So I should make these all center. Okay. And then my panel can control where this thing is. The anchor and dock, I haven't talked about UI much, though I will talk about UI in very great depth in the near future. one of the next week or two of streams, I'm going to be building a talent selector that you could use in a game, an RPG style game, to pick all the tree of dependent talents, and that is a lot of UI and a lot of scripting to go with it. For now, this will be quick, and we'll be on to more logic. We just need something simple. Anchor and dock is how each UI element finds its position based on its parent. One of them is which of the 9 points. See, there are 9 entries, and there's a custom. I don't even know what that does. This is madness. Did that give me a new entry? No, I don't. Can I actually? I have no idea what that does. Anyway, which of these 8 white dots or the blue plus is the point that it should choose at its center, and which one should it be based on the parent as well? It allows you to make UI that, depending on people with different aspect ratios, different screens, it still kind of looks correct. In my case, I need the text to be bigger. We unfortunately do not have vertical line text yet, so I can't force it to be in the center. I can make it in the center that way, which is great. I can just make it say about me. That is the first one I want. This text, let's see, clip text, nope, wrap text, don't need those. I would like this to be bigger, I think. I'd like this to be like 50 size text, and then make this 100 tall. How tall are these guys? 100. That's fine. This doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Move it up a little bit. Oh, it's snapped grid. Just find it to look about right. Click off it, you'll see. There's a button. I need one more. Just outside the panel. I'm actually just going to delete the image. This is a pro hack. I can't delete this. Clear value. An empty texture is a solid square. This is actually kind of useful. It goes there. We're going to make it huge. 120, 1080. Bam. All right. So now I can take a screenshot and it will look correct. People with dark themes will probably complain at me if I have white corners on it. I will figure that out later, I guess. I don't have Photoshop on this machine, but here is a screenshot. I will use my best photo editing software to turn into an actual thing to upload to the website. It's absolute best. Alright, it's hard on myself. Nope, not quite. How many pixels? What is this? That tells me 375 by 76. What did it say it was supposed to be? 480, really? That's 370. Oh, I didn't full screen it. Oh no, what have I done? Oop. Alrighty. Actually, you know what? So now I know that I have a way to make this reasonable. I'm going to leave that for now. Wasn't sure how well that would turn out. And we'll add those later. You guys don't need to watch me use a paint program terribly. Let's look at actual core stuff. Okay. Grapple world building tools. Let's knock that out of here a little bit. Effect river placer. I had some ideas. I saw a tool that an artist had made that looked pretty cool. That was basically place things intelligently. It made you able to make a map without having to place every piece yourself or carefully line up things. One thing you can do in core, I will show you 2 things you can do in core that are relevant to this discussion. One is, what do I call that? World building. World building. Okay. We're going to talk about core some more. You can go into here and say, I want to build a house. Well, that got a lot of pieces, and I'm not very good at that, but somewhere in here, we have 3D objects, tile sets. Great. Let's say I take the urban tile set. This has a bunch of pieces that you can use to make houses, including things that are very cleverly designed to line up correctly. So I take a wall, another wall, and I take my snap to grid and set it to, I believe, 800 actually. 800. The other wall. Bam! Lines up. Perfect. Looks nice. Take this guy. Half the garage door. You could have floors in here somewhere. There's floor tiles. Where are they? I could take the 3 I have on the other side and duplicate them and move them over here. I take them around. Too far. Alright. So you can build houses. There are roofs that go on top. And it's pretty easy to work with. Admittedly. You can make things that don't make sense, like this half garage door. You can make a stairway that goes straight to a roof, for example, which I'm about to do. There's some stairs. Here's a roof. You set this on a lower grid because the things are 600 high. Ooh, too far. Alright. So you can build things pretty easily, but you can also make nonsense. Right? Stairs you can poke outside a little bit because they're supposed to be internal. So here's my goal here. My goal is to... basically, the general idea is to make something that makes this even easier. To make something smart. You say, I want a house here, and it does some randomization and kind of builds some pieces together and makes a cool looking house and knows that stairs should actually go to floor. You know, it shouldn't have something right above it, but it should have something above and next to it and that sort of thing. This doesn't get really complicated. We're just going to explore a little bit today and see how, you know, if this looks promising. On top of that, there's a couple more details here. One is you can make a game that spawns a lot of objects from a script when it starts the game. You don't have a house there, it'll make a house. But if you make that client only or server only, it's not very helpful because it won't have any collision. And if server only, you can't even see it. If you make that networked, then every one of those objects gets sent over the network to every client that connects. The client doesn't know what the server decided to make. And that can be really costly to the extent that even if you build a medium number of things, if you have a couple houses that each have 50 pieces or 100 pieces, it can make the game take a while to connect. And if you get up into the thousands of networked objects, players sometimes just fail to connect because it takes so long to send all that stuff. There's a thing called a static context. Static context. That's up here. Which allows you to spawn objects as children of it, but it doesn't do any networking at all. So you can spawn client objects and server objects, and it will match them up and give them collision. The only thing you can do to change things under a client context or under a static context is spawn them. So you have to cleverly make your script that uses a networked seed, for example, and does the exact same random number generation, or just does something, you know, deterministic. And the client and the server will make exactly the same version of the world, and you can make a whole bunch of procedurally generated things. And people have made very large, complicated things with that. That is one way you can do this. I think even better, and I'm really hoping this works, is to make a tool that spawns things, and then I'll show you how it works in a minute, but basically you would spawn it when you're making your game. You'd hit the button and see here it generates something. You say, okay, I like this. Then you pull that piece into your actual game and put it somewhere, and then it doesn't change. It's not random. It's not different every time you play, but it enables you to very easily build things. You say, I want houses here, I want bushes in a street that makes sense, and it builds all the pieces for you. This is a tremendous undertaking. We're going to try a little bit of things and see how it works. Okay, so here we go. The thing that I want to do is make a script that spawns things randomly, and then see if I can copy those in the way I'm hoping it works. So random object spawner. Okay. We're going to give it a single thing to spawn. Call it object. This is going to look terrible. That's the idea. For I equals 1, 200, do spawn 200 of these things. Cool. I believe vector and do they have a random? Random seed might do something random. Let's see. Random stream can get vectors. Unit vector. Interesting. Colors know how to be random. Okay, vectors do not. That's fine. Position vector 3 dot new dot random, and we're just gonna do that 3 times in a row. And we could do this in a few ways. I'm actually using pass in values. So math.random, if you give it no argument at all, which I can show you on the official Lua documentation right here. If you give it no argument at all, it will, oops, that was kind of helpful. It will give you a random float between 0 and 1. If you give it an integer or 2 integers, it gives you a random integer between 1 and n or between m and n inclusive. So I could give it integers. Lua will convert them. It works in centimeters. You're not going to notice that it's on a centimeter grid. I could give them floats and try to multiply them up. I'm just going to give them integers, which is to say anywhere in 10 meters from the center of the map, and only up. Because if it went down, that would look dumb. Local rotation equals rotation dot new random. Let's see, times 360, I guess. Let's do that 3 times. It's not very uniform. It doesn't matter. We're just testing this works. I'm going to show you that it looks crazy. Because this is rotation, you get blocky issues, things won't line up that well. We can even do scale. Let's not worry about that. Will.spawn asset. One of my favorite functions. On object. And then we give it table, position equals position, rotation equals rotation. Despite the overloading name, I believe this works. This is the name of the property, the key of the table. This is the variable it's setting as the value. All right, so if I go into here and hit play, wham! That is kind of a mess. I can't move because I'm stuck inside of this amalgam of things. Great. Okay. This looks just amazing. So what I'm hoping I can do, this is the key on this whole system, is that I can go here in the hierarchy while I'm paused, select everything, say, hey, I like this. This is modern art. Hit pause, stop, and paste. Oh no. It might not work. The system might be fundamentally flawed. Can I copy one of them? All right, well, let's throw it out and find out why that doesn't work tomorrow. There are multiple ways this sort of thing could work from an engineering standpoint, that you could randomly generate things during the editor. You could have certain scripts you can run in the editor itself. I know that previously, I think that sort of thing worked. I'm surprised it doesn't. It's possible it was a bug introduced and not very commonly used. And I can move this time. Look at that. Can I get out of it? Nope, sure can't. That is a lot of things I spawned. But we will, if we can find a way to fix that, or another way to do this, I would like to make some things that do this kind of thing. Another example I have in my document, you may have noticed, is a river placer. It is kind of difficult in core to place water in ways that make sense. You have to use the primitive shapes, and water has a bunch of pieces, right? It's got to be the surface texture that looks good, and the volume that makes you swim, and the post-process that makes it look like you're underwater when you're underneath it, which previously some of those overlap, and now that's 3 separate pieces. And if you have a waterfall, you have to have all the effects and the spraying. It's a lot of pieces, and it's very easy to do things, which you can find in some of our example games. Or I guess you probably can't because they've been fixed, but you could at some point. Let us make a flat terrain. Delete the floor. Let's material terrain. Grass cliff, sure. Grab our terrain carving tools. Sculpt. Let it go down a little bit stronger. There's a river. Okay. And let's say over here you have just a gentle depression. You know, there's a valley coming over here or something. Okay. So you want this river to be full of water. And so you go find a plane, you stick it over here, you give it the water material, drink water, and you make it really big. Higher, whoops. That's what I was about to show you. Okay, looks like a river, you're happy with it, you look at it, and then it's got this part poking out over here. Very easy to do this sort of thing. So what I was hoping is that one example of this that I could do is a thing that actually tries to use physics and follows your map around and places all the pieces of waterfall at sudden drops, the little spraying things, it places the water and the swimming volumes and tries to be, you know, it would place a shape along the water here and then one along the river here with a whole bunch of traces and hopefully end up with something that looks pretty good. In reality, if I can't copy it, it does no one any good because I guess it does someone a little bit good. You could do it in static context, but I think that's a more limited application. I think realistically with this sort of thing, it would be useful to be able to generate it and then say, you know what, that's the shape I like, or generate 5 or 6 times until you see when that really works, and if it has a little bit of randomness to it or that kind of thing. Also, the static contexts inherently have some cost. Sometimes generation can be very slow. I know some people made games that literally took upwards of several minutes. Just kind of, it would work not completely solid. If you run too much time in script, it crashes out or errors, but it would work for a while and then yield, and work for a while and yield for 3 minutes straight until it generated this enormous maze, for example. And then you could run around it. But that was, you can't have that if you want to publish a game and have people actually play it. Okay, so that's right out for now. Come back to it. Grapple. Let's weather, time of day. There've been, I think about this more. I really want to have different weather effects be very easy to drag in. You just want a thunderstorm or a, I don't know, snowstorm, or there are things that really feel immersive, right? There's certain games that have that kind of feel. But I can show you. Winter Wonderland is a game that I was just experimenting with the map tools a little bit. There's no scripting in this. But it just took me half an hour to make. And it feels so, maybe this is just me, but this feels so like cozy. Like I grew up in a place that's very cold, and obviously this would be very cold. But I just, something about it is really nice. Like night sky, the wintry terrain. There's a house we were partway through building. But I was trying to make a snow effect, right? If you sit right here, and if I find this guy, let's say, I can probably turn the particle scale, no, not the particle scale, the quantity, density, hello? Look at all that snow. This looks great. But there's a particle limit, and this is in a volume, and if I try to make this the size of the map, it doesn't work at all. And so you'd want it to move around with you, but be smart. When you go inside, not keep going. Like, figure out where to stop and that sort of thing. And I think that would be a very cool component to have. Just get the snow effect going all the time. Or things that could dynamically change. You have a weather system that goes from rain to snow to that sort of thing. So that is a thing that I would like to make. Some of that would require some fiddling with those systems and understanding how they worked. And maybe they'd be a little janky, but we try. Time of day is another one. People want a day cycle or a different gameplay that affects those things. And grapple, people thought about this with the zip line. It's a thing you shoot at something and it pulls you towards it. I'm scared of making that. I listed it because it was mentioned that it was an obvious idea. But things that the server controls your movement in a way that changes constantly is really very incompatible with how the movement layer works, unfortunately, at the moment. you can do it, it can feel really bad sometimes. Every time the server sets the position of the player, it's telling the local client, hey, now do an override. I know you were doing all your stuff and you're in charge, but here's where you're going now. And the local client has to kind of teleport, and it feels a little bit snappy. And if you do that repeatedly, it gets very jarring. So what I'm going to do, I think, here is I'm going to build put a little bit of that snow some more. I'm going to take that thing right out of the map and then bring it into a new map and see what I can do with it. So it's this guy right here. Just copy that. Oops, I don't need to alt tab. It's sort of a difficult problem because you want it to... I can shoot traces upward to see if there's anything above you. That's a pretty simple way to know whether it should stop following you. But if I walk in the front door and then look out the window, it should be snowing out the window, not only out the front door. So I put this in here. It is not near the origin. Let's bring it back over here. How dense did this get? Yeah, this looks so good. Probably be more obvious if I change the sky here too. Let's night sky, nighttime. Blue, perfect. And a snowy terrain, perhaps. Interesting. Very similar. I think we can just take this floor and make it enormous and it'll be fine. So if I just hit play, look at the snow, great. If I look, as long as I'm staying in the middle of it, but if I stand over here I said, did something change about how this effect worked? That this is now functional how I want it to work? Or maybe my script follows me. Maybe since I brought the script over, maybe it's bringing it along with me. Let's see what this does. I wrote this a long time ago. Yep, it just makes it follow me. Perfect. And sit in front of me. Interesting. In front of my camera. Okay, let's delete that hierarchy for now. And now I can just walk outside of it. Okay, fine. That actually worked much better than I expected. Question is, what do I do when this goes into a building? I kind of want a little bit of effect around every window of the building, but that's very hard to do because the particle limit's pretty limiting. Let's do a couple tests. If I go to window, okay. I'm wondering how from script can I tell that there's a window that I can see through? Is it collidable? Can I jump through this window? I can. Are there windows that you can't jump through? Definitely. If we make a cube. This may be a very hard problem to solve. I would like it to work. There are games that make very good-looking weather effects, and they're one of the things that I feel like the most impacts the feel of the game, that I really enjoy playing those. Let's find something translucent. Glass. Frosted glass? That's reflective. Glass. That's translucent. Alright, and then let's take our snow and send it off over there somewhere. What I'm trying to do is see what tools do I have from script to see this. Can I, if I try to fire a ray through these, what does it hit? I suspect it'll just go by collision, in which case I kind of have this very difficult challenge when I go into a building, which is, excuse me, kind of like, think about this a little bit, trying to like, I send a bunch of ray traces and find the perimeter of the building at the layer I'm at, or I maybe the way to do this is to keep a height map around. I have some around the player, and I basically just keep track of how high the highest thing in the world is relative to me. It's similar to the grass spawner. I don't know if you guys ever saw the grass spawner. Some of you have seen the grass spawner. The grass spawner makes Lua cry, and then makes Core cry because Lua is eating all the resources. But basically it shoots traces everywhere and figures out what the height of the terrain is, and if it's what the angle is, and if it's grass, or if it's the right material and that sort of thing. We're doing a similar thing. We shoot traces around and say, is there a roof over me? Is there a roof over me? Over here, 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 here. Find a bunch of spots. And then it would just say, okay, well, wherever in an area close to you, you'd have some limit to how dense it could be and how big it could be, but an area close to you, anywhere that has sky above it, you spawn this, and anywhere that doesn't, you don't. And I might need to spawn a bunch of pieces of this, I guess. Or spawn it higher up. What happens if I put this higher up? How far down do they fall below the trigger volume? Probably based on lifespan. Let's turn the lifespan up to crazy numbers. Can I cheat? At some point here I expect this to just stop snowing because I'll hit the particle limit. Yes, see how it stopped? Unreal's got a hard-coded particle limit and starts again. So that's actually pretty, this is surprisingly close to the limit. If I put the life down to like 15, it might be fine. Another thing I can do is set the vertical scale to 1 and make it a lot lighter. Density is already 10. I can make this 30 maybe? Can I go overdrive? Yeah, okay. This is actually a much cheaper solution. If I hit play, if I'm running around with this above me, you know what? This has an added catch, which is that it can't as easily follow my camera, right? Because it's way above me. So when I move, it'd be behind me a little bit, and I never want this experience where it looks like the snow stopped. Okay, so we can set it back to how it was before. Set density down to 10, Z-scale down to that, set life down to 2. No, it was 5 maybe. Good work. It's kind of one of those, this is the only weather effect you get. I think other particle systems fight with the same limit. And then you just stick it to the camera, and when you go inside, it's doing traces upward, and if it hits something, it stops and moves and goes farther up. It switches modes to, I guess, just be above things. So it always makes sure that there's nothing above it. Yeah, I think that'll work. There'll probably be edge cases if this falls apart, but we're going to give it a try. So we had that script before. Oh, there's no client. And it probably had some references that I just destroyed by deleting it. Sure did. Alright, it's got this guy. Snow volume SFX. Is that what it's called? No, it's called snow. Alright, so previously it just took the camera's position and rotation. Yeah, okay, it needs rotation because it needs to be in front of your camera wherever you're looking. It doesn't need to rotate itself, I don't think. Maybe it doesn't matter. Okay, world scale 10. I'm not gonna get rid of that line. I don't need to set the scale the same every frame. This is kind of a system that's gonna work if you set it up just right and not gonna be too consistent anyway. So what we want to do is make sure there's not, check for a roof. I'm wondering if we want to do some combination of checking ahead of you or just like a couple traces at least. Like you don't want it to snow a little bit in the building. That's going to look really bad. Maybe a little bit's okay, but if it goes halfway into the room before it disappears, that's going to look really strange. And we're going to need some buildings for this. Let's get some roof. Roof, I say. We don't need this guy anymore. Get rid of him. We're gonna put snap to grid, position 200, grid, got it. Okay, that's fine. Boop. Boop, boop, boop. Make ourselves a nice little house. Oops. House that has no floor. You don't need floors. Floors for suckers. All right. That guy. I don't know. I move first to have it move, rotate, move again because the rotation moved it. Now we have a house with no floor. Maybe it's floors in here. How do I feel bad about my house having no floor? And one of these needs a door. Oh, it doesn't have the word door in it, really. Oh, yeah, it does right there. Let's get rid of the other piece in that same spot. Put this guy in. Perfect, we have a house. A little shack. And we have snow on top of us. How strange. Alright, let us see about sending traces up. World.raycast. Snow position. Raycast anyway. How far do we need to raycast up? Like, if you're in a really tall building, I'm just gonna be fine with it snowing. Like, you want it to like have some max limit. Raycasts are the cost scales exactly with the length of the raycast, I think. So we're gonna say 10 meters. 10 meters is a lot. 20 meters. Let's do 20 meters for now. Ignore players. Can I do all players? I don't know what this function well enough. Start rand table parameters. We can ignore teams, ignore players, or true. Okay, I can set this to true. Perfect. Okay. How convenient. I probably want the results. The perils of scaled up text in a text editor. Perfect. I think we want to do this before we set the position. The other question is, do we want to cast up from where we put it and say, oh, we hit the ceiling? No, we want to cast down from above and say, did we hit anything? Let's do the opposite recast. This will be the, if there's nothing there, it's the same result. There's no result. If there is something here, we're going to just move the snow up. This will be simple in the fact that it will make us not have the snow above, like inside a building. But we also won't be able to see it out the window unless it we wait a little bit and it falls down. But I have a clever solution to this that I like a lot. Okay. I will get back to that in a minute. This is gonna be much better. This is likely one of those things that if I were to think about this more and try a bunch of things and spend a week trying A, then B, then C, then D, I would come up with a solution or someone else knows of it, many other people know of solutions that work really well. You know, sometimes just the exact right hack turns out really well. One example of this is the balloon in the hub world. I wrote some physics code in client context, and it turned out looking sweet, but it did not look good an hour before it looked really good. It rotated the wrong way. It felt very bad. The string flew off into it was all sorts of badness. So what we're going to do is just say if we hit something, what is the hit results? It's got an impact position. That's really all we need here. Hit position equals, I guess I should call it impact position. Okay, so it hit something. If that's true, we're going to just move it so that none of the particles come through. We know how big this thing is. We set it to be 10 meters for 10 meters for 10 meters. So we need to take snow position dot z equals plus 5,000. Just like that. I should put a 0 here. So if we hit something in our trace, then make sure we put it exactly on top of the thing we hit. Admittedly, with an angled roof, this isn't going to quite work, but we're going to try. We might just want to add an extra factor to this. Right? So that snow disappears, the snow comes in front of us. We go inside, and script errors. Perfect. Get impact position. Yeah, I sure didn't actually write hit result here. Okay, so we'll update that. The other thing I was going to do, maybe the snow volume have these longer life particles a little bit. Oh, that's fine. Look at that, no snow. If I stand over here, wow, this really works. Well, sort of. There's nothing outside. Where is the snow? Oh, it is way up here. Way too high. Yes, I made 50 meters, not 5 meters. Look at that. So clean. Come out here. Bam. Okay. Let's take a 0 off there and see what it actually should look like. Still stops. A little bit of snow. A lot of snow. Okay, so the problem is, you see it. It's exactly on the roof where we hit it. And this part, this corner is through here. So we have some snow coming through. Actually a lot of, did it just fall right through the roof? Well, it's gonna make this a lot more difficult. If I stand right, my camera right in the middle of the roof. Okay, this totally falls through the roof. This is an unfortunate development in my plan. I don't know that. Okay. That's not where that should be. Get view world rotation times forward. How is that not directly above us? So view world position rotation should be where my view is down here, and it should take me basically straight up. And so the center of this thing should be right here, and it should be centered right on the top of the roof. All right, let's kill the roof and just move the floor up and see, just to test. Boop. All right, now I have a flat roof. A lot of snow. All right, so the snow may just go through things. Let's look at the snow volume. Box, color, smooth, life, density, gravity. Okay, well, that's a shame. What I was going to do to make this work better, since the real limit we're hitting here, this is all client-side logic, it's not too expensive. The real limit we're hitting is the particle limit. So I was going to break this up into a bunch of little pieces that have 9 or 16 or 25 or some roughly circular shape. of these things that each are responsible for a small fraction of it, and they each shoot their own traces. So that when you stand on the edge of the building, you have some up here and some down here. And then when you look out the window, you see the ones down below, but you still have the ones above you. And if you have a skylight or something, you can look up and see them. And basically, to stay around your camera so you'd see them. We do a little bit of I'm going to draw a picture here. No, Carter has a picture on it. So your camera has a frustum. You see roughly a cone shape in front of you. Here, a cone. It's a V. I just drew a large V. And currently, the way this works is it just puts it right in front of you, right? So your box of snow is right there. But realistically, you can back up or turn very quickly, and then suddenly you can't see, you don't see the snow. Especially since your player character is, often a third-person camera. So when you rotate your camera, you rotate 90 degrees, you go from that old to the new, and suddenly you are seeing the edge of the box, and it looks really bad. So what I would like to do is make the logic a little smarter, make it kind of a fuzzy shape in front of your camera, but also where you might be able to look quickly. Maybe it's biased towards your character a significant amount, so that when you turn around quickly, you get an angle on that kind of thing. It could just be right on top of your character, and hope your camera's looking at your character. That's very easy to do, right? We just setting game view world position, we get world position. We get rid of this guy right here, in which case we don't need that at all. Well, we would use it down there, but let's copy paste, comment some things out. We're coming out what we had before. We'll take this guy and this guy out. So this just puts it on my player's head. Let's rotate around. Looks very good. I move. So you want a little bit of fuzziness in each direction the player can move. Looks very thin when moving forward, but it should look thicker. Moving backward looks thicker when, well, that's okay. When I'm inside, well, we'll have to ask the creator of this what I have set wrong. Basically, there's probably some way to make this not go through things. The particle system's pretty smart about things. Does a lot of very fancy stuff. And I don't see an obvious option to change. Maybe there's a different snow volume entirely. Maybe this is for a specific use case. We will find out. Oh, more people showing up. Amazing. Do we have anything else to do for the last little bit? Time of day. That's an easy component to make. Let's do that. Maybe it's not that easy, but we will create it anyway. All right, so time of day accounts for a couple things, or you would need to change a few things. You would probably want to move the sun. You may have a moon, and you may want to change the lighting. There's probably a lot of research done into this, both in video games and video and movies and that sort of thing, of exactly what color palettes and I'm probably using the wrong terms, how to bias all the colors to tint everything to make it look correct at different times a day. We're gonna do something cheap and see how it looks. The sun and the moon is easy. Here's a group. Time of day controller. Sure. We need a reference to. You already have a sky. Sunlight. If one of these, when I rotate it, it'll move the sun. I need to figure out which one it is. That's the one. The sun vanished. Okay, this is hackery. You see it actually changes the lighting in our scene? Not enough, but a moderate amount. Okay. So we'll leave that back out. Oh, it was now over there. Great. So when it goes down below, it automatically disappears. That's very convenient. All right, we have a moon. Of course we do. Why would we not have a moon? Got everything. Where's our moon? Moon, hello? Let's align our cameras so we can see what we're doing. That's a pretty dark moon. All right, now I'm laughing. In video games and books and stuff, the moon and sun are often opposites. Most people will see the moon at night because the sun's not there to get in the way. But in real life, that's not how they work, and they are just in two different cycles that have no, generally not, what's the word I'm looking for? They're relatively prime. They don't have greatest common factors. There's probably a better term for this. But the moon is in the sky just as often during the day as it is at night. You just can't see it a lot of the time. This moon, if we take the brightness and where is our brightness? Let's get it out of here. Intensity. Ooh, nope, that's not doing much. Sky dome. There we go. Real dark. Now let's make our moon. We're gonna put it in the sky thing. So we have a moon. Man, that is really dim. So I'm laughing because we could go really crazy with this, right? Ooh, that's fun, slider. We could make the moon. We could actually do a real time scale type thing. You know, you could have the moon go on its own cycles. It could go. You could go nuts with this. They're astronomy nerds. You could make them do all the things that real moon and Earth do. It has its full, its new moon. It's different shapes, different cycles. You got Mars moving around. There are people who love this. We're not going to go that deep. In fact, we're probably only going to do a little bit of this tonight and play with it later because I think that actually is a lot more interesting than I had given credit when I first jumped into this. Especially with all the parts of the coloring and everything. This is going to be fun. I like this. First of all, how bright can I make this thing? Because this is not doing what I want. Well, that's kind of bright. How do I get a basic moon? Magma moon? It went somewhere else. I know, Mr. Moon. There's our, it's eclipse. How strange. Oh, I made it. Cheese moon. I should probably mouse over this. This has a basic moon in the sky, ideal position in the horizon, negative x-axis. Try a planet. Aha. Basic moon. It's. Oh, of course. Speaking of astronomy nerds, do you see what's happening here? It is a sliver because it cares where the sun is. Of course it does. And if we take the sun and rotate it the other way, maybe it only updates when I move the moon a little bit. It's pretty cool. Anyway, all right, so we didn't have to handle that part. Great, I was going to write a script to do this. So you move the moon around and it knows where the sun is, and the sun controls how it looks. That's cool. The person who makes our VFX may be one of those nerds who makes these things super realistic. What is the dark side appearance? None. Earth-like? This might not update when I move it, might be the problem. Ooh, there's magma. None. Earth-like. Patchy. I can make this thing like way bigger to tell what's going on. There we go. We hit the skybox. Let's make that a little bit smaller. Whoop. Okay. And then move the sun a little bit. So we're getting... Yeah, this wouldn't be terrifying at all. That a little bit smaller. Okay. Like this... The dark side is hard to see with the sun where it currently is. Moon. It updates sporadically. I think this might be one of those things that during the game itself it would update correctly, but during the editor it's a little bit inconsistent. Patchy, scattered. Interesting. What happens if I make this a magma moon now? Oh, I see. It's very dark. If I make the sun the other way, move the moon around a little bit, don't have to update itself. Oh, that looks cool. It's really dark. I had the wrong sky for this, but that's pretty cool. Let's get that night sky going on here. Drag that out over here. I'm gonna destroy some of these things. The skylight, sun and moon I like. Sky dome I don't. And the sunlight, how similar are these? Just much dimmer. Let's kill it. Well, it looks night upwards. There's clouds. Environmental fog. Is this the clouds? Yes. No, it's not. Where did these come from? Stardome? Nope. This is interesting. Certain things in a game that you tend to play with for a while, fiddle with, and just kind of see what you like. Find the thing that you like and say, okay, that's good enough for me. And this is one of those, I think. Oh, there we go. The sky dome has the clouds on it. We don't need clouds. Ooh, there we go. Now you can see the red moon. This would spell doom for us all. Instead, the cheese moon. Yeah. Blue moon, okay. A basic moon, cool. And then we have planets. Planet and planetary ring, which for some reason this guy doesn't even have these by default. And do a client context. Look at that. Where's the planetary ring? Is that this guy? Nope. Oh, it's planetary ring when you're on the planet. Well, that's cool. And then the planet itself. And this guy, also paying attention to where the sun is, of course. I should just delete this floor, is what I should do. Yeah, we got eaten by the moon. Sorry, I have to laugh. That's Earth. I've seen this planet before. Planet appearance. Can I rotate it? Or nope. Okay. I was like, can I get it to show me the other side? I probably can. Earth-like cratered Martian landscape. Or Swiss cheese. That's okay. Well, this is pretty cool. We've got into a foray of exploring the sky stuff instead of trying to make day and nighttime. So basically the things we want to control, and I will do this probably next time, I'll leave that exactly where it is we would want to have the sun and moon move around. We'd want some options for what, let me go into a minor tangent of a pet peeve here. There are certain video games that I played a lot that have a day-night cycle that is exactly 24 hours. And it just mimics the real life. And the problem is that certain people tend to play the game always at the same time. You have a certain work schedule, you've got a certain sleep schedule, you're always available, in the evenings or the mornings or whatever your schedule is. And so when you play these games, you always get the same experience and you never see the other parts. And for me, many years ago, this was playing World of Warcraft. And I remember one day I happened to have a chance at a very different hour than normal to play, and I was like, why does this look so different? And I realized it looks really cool, and there were all these things I just never gotten to see or appreciate at all. So, my message here is your day-night cycle should not be 24 hours. It should be some smaller number, and if it's even more than a few hours, it should make sure to not be around factor of 24 hours. It should be that if someone can only play from 3 to 4 every day, they should get a different experience in different days. So we'll give this some multiplier of what's the day's length, and let people do that if they want. But maybe a comment about it. Something about how realistic the moon is. One option where it is exactly opposite the sun, like Minecraft, for example. One option where it's going on a different cycle and just a different time that you can put in, or maybe a realistic timing. The moon is 28 times as much as the sun, point something. I have to do Google search to figure out exactly what that time is. We could add a lot of details if we wanted to go deep on this. We could make the moon get a little bit closer and a little bit further. We could make it change its effects based on certain patterns, and you know, the super moon and the red moon and that kind of thing, which are real but somewhat minor effects based on lots of other things. Like blood moon, not red moon. And then I think the real key, besides just moving those, is the lighting. The sun is always already going to do some lighting on its own and change around, but we want to change the tint of both the sun and the overall light to match. And what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to look at the skies that were already made by someone much more artistic than me. And I'm going to take the night sky. There's an early morning sky. There's a nighttime sky, which we already have. And there might be an evening sky. There might not. Okay, I might just do a little bit of Googling. Basically, look at the colors in these and take these as the base points and then work between them as the time goes on. Somewhat. I think that realistically, most of the day is the same colors. It's just a little bit brighter, a little bit darker. And then the colors really change right around the morning and right around the evening, sunset and sunset, or sunrise and sunset. And then the night is almost the same the entire time along. So we'll put that into a script. We'll move the things around, and then we'll sit in a game where we have those set to crazy values, so it changes over a minute or two and looks hopefully like a day-night cycle. And we'll see about where this goes in my line of component versus community content. But that's what we're gonna do. In fact, I can even tell you when, because this is the end of tonight's stream, unfortunately. But I will be doing this tomorrow at 7 p.m. Pacific, same time as I did today. And that is what we're going to do first, I think, unless something else comes up that's very important. Thanks for watching, everyone.